Yeah, see, I thought of something funny. Well, I thought it maybe not be funny. All right. Okay, so this is something that's been coming up, and I really, I'd have to say I'm on the fence about this. I don't feel strongly one way or the other, although I know I should. Um, this idea that we're going to send bombs into Syria. Okay, on one thing, the Iraq War, on no evidence, they said that, and it came out later, it wasn't true. And except for the crazy, there's a guy on radio calls them, what he calls them, wingers. And wingers was when he says left or right. It's just people that are so extreme on one side, they don't listen to reason, you know. And except for those right wingers that are saying, oh, it's a conspiracy, that he really did have weapons of mass destruction or whatever. And they come up with all kinds of crazy reasons. That they were smuggled out, I forgot what the explanation was. But it came out, no, that was all false. We invaded Iraq on false premises. The general public on the right still associated Saddam Hussein with 9/11, even though that was clearly wrong. Bush never came out and said Saddam Hussein was not responsible for 9/11. He just let people believe that so they would support his war. But then on Syria, we do, for a while, been hearing stuff about him using sarin gas on the rebels. I guess since the Arab Spring, this stuff is started having an uprising and problems with the rebels there. I just, in general, I can't say that I follow everything that goes on in the Middle East because it just generally just seems it's always trouble over there. You'll hear stuff about Egypt, which sounds pretty bad, you know. You hear stuff about Syria, and of course that's been in the news a lot more. So, way back when, the British Empire, when they had their empire spread out, and they were pretty much established themselves as the world power, they started sticking their nose in other people's business. And one of the main things that I could cite as an example was, you know, they bought and sold slaves. They had slaves in England and all that. But at some point, the abolitionist movement, I think, took hold in England first. And they started going around the world trying to abolish slavery. They abolished slavery in the United Kingdom, or were trying to. Of course, they had child labor. I'm watching this show called The Mill, which is a pretty good show. I got off to kind of a slow start, but I've been watching a lot of shows. And I'm sorry, this is that side of me that is not terribly macho, but I do enjoy romantic comedies, and so for some reason I do enjoy those period pieces, sort of like those Jane Austen sort of things where there's a bunch of, like, you know, British aristocracy, but aristocrat, not royalty, but, you know, those fat cats and stuff, and their huge mansions, and he's in love with her, but she's in love with him, and, you know, then there's tragedy, or sometimes it's a poor, you know, relation that goes to live with these other people and stuff, and for some reason, I find it interesting, so I end up watching a slew of those. Well, the neat thing about The Mill, and this is hard to find, there's not too much about it unless you read Charles Dickens, is but even some Charles Dickens novels deal with aristocracy. But the point of view from the poor and what's going on in the mill is it's a textile mill that makes cloth from cotton, and I won't go into a long story about it, but you know, they have women, child labor, and you know, in terrible working conditions, and basically they are slaves. They have a deal. They're sort of indentured servants, and when they reach a certain age, they're allowed to leave. But on the other hand, you know, like some people argue about child labor in third world countries, they say, well, hey, they're better off than not having a job, and so you could kind of have that argument that these children, a lot of them are orphans. They would be starving on the street. Some of these, the show in the mill in this show, is kind of better than the other places. They do try or they do sort of make an effort to be humane. They think they are. They think they're more humane than the other places. And in comparison, they probably are. But the women, mostly it centers on women, but there's a young boy that loses his hand in one of the weaving machines, or whatever you call them. They get food, and they get a place to sleep. So that's the trade-off. But anyway, the point is, Britain and the abolitionist movement, but it did occur to me that during the Civil War, they supported the South. I guess it's because they wanted their coffin. Is that a Freudian slip? They wanted their, I don't know how that could be a Freudian slip, but they wanted their cotton. And so that probably superseded their anti-slavery stance. And maybe I have it wrong, but I think the abolitionist movement started in England. I know that the movement to be kind to animals, the anti-vivisection movement started there. So a lot of these, and then you see on the mill, a lot of these labor laws are starting there, even before I think they got a foothold in the United States. So I'd have to credit the British Empire for a lot of these leftist notions. We had Labor Day, and people forget what Labor Day is about. It's about the worker, the 40-hour work week, getting paid overtime for working over 8 hours, a minimum wage. And all these right-wingers, and especially the white trash right-wing, I'm sorry. But the lower end, the poor white folk that vote against their own interests by voting, for the conservatives. They don't even realize, they just don't have enough knowledge to realize that, they're celebrating Labor Day and having their barbecues, but Labor Day, that's what it is about. It's not some conservative group that came up with Labor Day. It was the left, it was the liberals, it was the workers. Workers used to be smart and join unions and stuff, but now everybody's anti-union because they swallowed the propaganda. And granted, I believe unions got too strong and became evil. Anytime anything becomes too strong, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yes, it is a problem. Everything needs to be kept in check. The left needs to be kept in check. The right needs to be kept in check. Conservatives need to be kept in check. Liberals need to be kept in check. No, I'm not for abolishing one or the other. So war with Syria, the whole British Empire thing was about sticking our nose in other people's business. And the British at one point thought they could police the world. And they tried. And were successful in some areas. Now it falls on the United States, which is basically an extension of the British Empire. Still. So then it sort of falls. We have like the largest military in the world, and it's just crazy. I saw one of these graphs where it compared the military of the might compared to the rest of the countries, and it's like there's a missile that's like this tall, and then every other country is like this and this and this. Such a big difference. So if anybody has the military might to police the world, we do. But we're hating life here. Economy sucks and everything because Bush started 2 wars without raising taxes. Said that the oil was going to pay for it, and that never did. It just made the oil companies rich. God, I want to go on a whole different subject, but anyway. So do we step in and bomb Syria? Even though they're promising us not to put boots on the ground, but I don't know. It just seems like you just drop bombs and just say, okay, that's a good one. These missiles can target pretty well, but do we have the intel, the intelligence to know that we're hitting our targets, that we're crippling their ability to make chemical weapons? Excuse me. There'll be collateral damage. There'll be civilians that are hurt. Have we really thought about the repercussions? I did hear, though, that this is strange, that there's other Middle Eastern countries, I'm sorry I can't name them, but there are other Middle Eastern countries that do not want to see unrest in Syria and don't want to see what's going on there. And they're ready to pony up with some money to fund anything that we do over there. I'm going to adjust my tassel. So that's interesting. You didn't see that happen, I don't think, with Iraq. Did Kuwait pony up and give us some money? Maybe they did. I don't know. So I'm on the fence with that. It's funny, I see so much of the on the left being against the war. The funny thing is that and they're just coming right out saying we're against the war. Al Brookman posted the thing about this, the leftist celebrities waiting for them to come out because he thinks they've been silent, but apparently there are a few that have come out. Maybe they're like me, they're on the fence, they don't know what to make of it. But on the right, they are so anti-Obama. This is what I wrote on his Facebook post. They are so anything that Obama comes up with, they're against. Even the garden at the White House that Michelle Obama planted, they're against that. Against them getting a dog, they were against that. So, but the conservatives in the right, they just love to go to war. They just love it. And so they don't know what to do. The thing is, and I have no memory, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have no memory of there being any real criticism of President Bush when he started 2 wars without raising taxes, which basically broke the country. Put us where we are. That deficit. They keep all these people, oh, Obama created this deficit. No. So anyway, I'm not saying the war solely did it by itself. There were other policies that were put in place. I'm blaming Bush, okay, for a bad economy. But I didn't see any strong criticism on the right about doing that. They all seem to back him up blindly. Whereas in our situation, there are Obama supporters that are criticizing Obama. I not for the war so much, like I said, or a potential war. Like I said, I'm pretty much anti-war in general, but I'm also the whole thing about, look, I've always seen the world as like this giant neighborhood. And if the guy down the street was beating his wife, do you say, well, it's none of my business, or do you do something about it? Which reminds me of that great movie Barfly, where not Brooks, but the movie Barfly, where he hears, Charles Bukowski, fictional, well, actually not so fictional, but it's a movie about Charles Bukowski. He hears he's in this shithole apartment house, building, and he hears his neighbor beating up his wife. So he goes next door and pounds on the door and says, "Stop doing." He stops it. He might even hit the guy. I'm not sure what happened. And the wife is all like, "Get the fuck out of here! Leave him alone!" And I saw a guy really yelling at his girlfriend once when I was a teenager. I was delivering pizzas at this pizza place, and I went out in the parking lot, and this guy was being real mean to this girl. I thought it was his girlfriend, and yelling at her. I thought he was about to hit her, and I walk over, they go, "Are you," like I'm not a fighting guy, but I had to say something. I said, "Are you all right?" to the girl. She said, "Get the fuck out of here, mind your own business." But still, you got to do something. And my good friend, Methadone for Life, Hugh, he has the attitude that you don't go to war unless you're being attacked. Or, there's a strong potential for being attacked, because I'm sure he wasn't against us entering World War II. I'm just going to have to assume that. Most liberals are okay with that. I've never met a liberal that said they were against. Usually it's libertarians that would say we should have stayed out of World War II, against the United Nations and all that stuff. Am I boring you with this? The long way around about why I'm not... I was going to say the right is much different than the way it used to be. During the era when there was William F. Buckley, you actually had a person with intellect, that argue a point and was familiar with debate and wouldn't like a Jim O'Reilly. What's the guy's name? O'Reilly on the O'Reilly Factor. Did I say Jim? What's his name? Anyway, the guy on is it Jim? Now I'm confused. There's Jim O'Reilly on YouTube, and then there's O'Reilly, the O'Reilly Factor on Fox. Who shouts over his opponent when he starts to lose. I've run into this many times when I'm having a political debate with somebody, and they start to try to shout over me and start with the name calling. Then they're floundering, they're losing, and the right isn't like the way it used to be when Buckley was one of the representatives for the conservative movement. I wish those days were back because they're just a bunch of idiots right now, And in comparison, even L. Brookman looks more William F. Buckley, but he does resort to name calling pretty often. And I would think that you could look at my sparring with L. Brookman that I do not make personal attacks nor resort to name calling. Like you can tell what you're dealing with, when you hear the word feminazi or libtard. You might as well just walk away. They're idiots. So I'm not, and I would say, and I said to Al Brookman, I said, you're beside yourselves because, the conservatives hate Obama, and anything that Obama comes up with, they're against. No matter how good it is, no matter how much sense it makes, they're against it, and yet they love to go into war. And there's plenty. You didn't see the right criticizing Bush, but there's plenty of liberals criticizing Obama on this and other issues, like the NSA thing. But this NSA thing was going on during the Bush administration. This is all post 9/11. And Cheney this was Cheney, Dick Cheney, which his last name was really pronounced Cheney, but he doesn't correct anybody, which I think says something about him. I don't know. My last name is Blakeney. They always want to say Bleakney, but I correct them. No, it's Blakeney. And for somehow they have a hard time saying that. Anyways, a lot of people do. I don't know why. It seems so simple. Blakeney. Anyway, the word break, as into he break his knee. See, that's the A sound, the long A sound. Is that what they call it? Break, or in like beefsteak. So it is correct, except you see the word bleak. Of course, that says a lot about my family. Bleak. My outlook on life is usually bleak. Things that are happening to me, it's quite bleak. Anyway, Cheney. Cheney is the one that gave all those powers to the presidency because they grabbed it because of 9/11, and people were so scared they were willing to do anything, and they created Homeland Security and started changing the rules on when you grab somebody and lock them up. How long you can keep them before before you get some real evidence on them. So, by the way, man, it's hot here. God, that was another reason I didn't feel like posting Fez Nights. I've just been exhausted. I'm just noticing how warm I feel right now. It's going on 43 minutes. It's a really long Fez Night. I should start wrapping it up. Hopefully, those of you that watch Fez Night saw the politics part coming up and stopped watching. So I'll finish with one thing at the end here, which isn't politics. But I just want to say, what is wrong with the GOP? The GOP is losing popularity. They're in trouble because they're not keeping up with the times. And you hear a lot of criticism of Obama. And by the way, Obama, once power is given, usually people won't want to give it up. So when Obama stepped into office, he had all these powers, which I wish he would have given up. I wish he would have closed Guantanamo Bay. I wish he would have done something about needing warrants to eavesdrop on people, but they threw that away with Homeland Security. I wish they'd break up Homeland Security. But remember, a lot of these things were happening under Bush. In fact, a lot of these things happened because of Bush, and yet they're blaming Obama for it. So what is wrong with the GOP is that they're losing touch with the whole gay marriage thing. The Tea Party has gotten too much power there. I've never met a racist that votes a Democrat. I've never met a racist that's registered a Democrat. There's just, the Republican Party is just falling behind the times. And they think that, instead of changing their message, they think they need to find new ways to get their message across, and that's just not working for them. So you're becoming more and more irrelevant. I think we should have a parliamentary system in our country. As much as our system is so wonderful, and innovative, and a model for the world. Except I think we made a mistake by not using a parliamentary system, because in that case we could have all these, we could have a Green Party, we could have the Democratic Party could be broken up into fragments, because we're not all on the same page about so many things. But the GOP is pretty much always lockstep. You have very few dissenters. Like Ronald Reagan said, never, I can't remember the exact quote, but he said, never diss a fellow Republican. Just don't do it. But Democrats do that all the time and fight amongst themselves. Will Rogers said, I do not belong to an organized party, I'm a Democrat. Whereas the Republicans are very organized. The right is authoritarian, so they march lockstep. But not since the Tea Party came in. They need to break away from them. So you could have a separate party. You could have some sort of new Republican Party, that makes sense, that goes towards the William F. Buckley thing, to stick to the true values of conservatism, and observe freedom of religion and that sort of thing, because William F. Buckley was a Catholic, and yet they welcomed him. And the Tea Party could be its own little fringe, crazy, wacko group. But instead, the GOP actually worries what the Tea Party has to say. Okay, now this one thing, a little thing. And I'm sorry, I keep bringing this stuff up again. I know it's old. It's growing old. And hopefully someday I'll mention this less and less. But this is about Pops. Okay, that last big run-in I had with him on Facebook, because he posted a comment on Jeff's post, and then I posted there first, and then he followed up, and then I took a jab at him and erupted in a big fight. And I'll admit I took the first poke, but it was just a little tap. It was a love tap. And then he just erupted into a FOMA. He accused me of dropping his docs. And most of the time I just ignore what he has to say, except when he did call me a beaner, and I called him out on being a racist, and I still do. But he accused me of dropping his docs, and then later I was thinking, he usually makes up stuff out of thin air, but I said, why would he think that I dropped his docs? I've never given out his phone number. I used to have his phone number, but I'm sure it's not the same anymore, and I lost it besides. And I've never given out his address. I did have his address to send a Fez, or maybe it was Lisa's address, I'm not sure. But I've lost all that stuff. And so I was thinking, maybe it was that one time. Okay, so this is the thing. I used to give Pops grief about calling himself Pops. I said, here's an aging, and I'm aging too, an aging single man who's never been married, doesn't have children, calls himself Pops. I think that's a little creepy. And I won't. I think you can extrapolate. You can kind of figure out without me saying why it's creepy. You don't want me to explain. Anyway, I had him. He's like, no, it's short because of Pop Art Productions. I don't call myself Pops in the real. Just on YouTube. And I tend to trust Lisa. I tend to trust her, that I think that she's, on the up and up, and she tells the truth. And she said, no, she defended him. No, he doesn't use Pops in the real world. And then I came across this listing on LinkedIn, and I don't know how they put this up, but it's potential people that I might know, and I don't know how they come up with this. It's crazy. It said Pops Delisle. Out there on the East Coast, not too far from where I would think Pops lives. And, foreman or manager at the Labor Ready Grill. And I mentioned that on Fez Night. So maybe he thinks that's me dropping his docs. So if he says I dropped his docs, that means that Pops Delisle, that's on LinkedIn, that works at Labor Ready Grill, is him. Otherwise, why would he say that? And so, to say, both of you, to say that Pops doesn't use that name in the real, you're lying. You're liars. Or it's not him and I never dropped his docs. Then you're still a liar saying that I dropped your docs. Anyway, I had to say that. I just, you know, you're stuck anyway. And so you just come back with some crazy stuff. Why are you a liar? But I got you. You're busted. Both of you. All right. Okay, that's it. I better wrap up this Fez Night. All right. All right. Thank you for watching this Fez Night. Thank you for watching. I forgot how I do my end. Thank you for watching Fez Night. Patent pending. Have a great week. Cheers.